We know that fountain pen inks are dye-based. One of the earliest inks is, after all, homemade iron gall ink. So, can the natural inks we have been creating so far be used in fountain pen inks? I answer that question in today's video. I'm going to name 3 basic criteria for fountain pen inks. There are of course many other criteria for good fountain pen inks, but we're looking at the baseline criteria. The first is ink flow. In terms of ink flow, natural inks can be made to varying level of thickness, which can affect how well it flows. The thinner the dye, the easier the flow, although the less intense the color will be. To get a concentrated intensity of color, you need to cook down the ink for a lot longer. So far, in my journey, I've found flower dyes to be quite vivid, intense, and not easily degraded by heat. So even at a more dilute concentration, the color of the dye comes through. Here's how dark the butterfly blue pea flower is, as well as the red carnation flower. I do like fruit-based natural inks too, but the color tends to be faint unless it's cooked down for a longer time. That gives rise to another issue, which is that there's a higher amount of sugar that is present in the fruit juice, and that may caramelize in the heated dye bath and makes the inks more brown and not so true to color. Here is the dragon fruit. The vivid unheated ink may flow better because it is less viscous, but the ink can be quite faint. The point of calligraphy, or any writing for that matter, is legibility. So faint but well-flowing ink is a no-go in my opinion. If you're using brushes or a dip pen for your calligraphy work, you can always go over the strokes for a deeper ink, but that may be quite cumbersome for fountain pens if you're using it to write a journal entry, for example. All this to say, in order to have vivid color, you need to have thick ink, and thick ink is not going to flow well in your fountain pen ink. If you're finding this video useful so far, do like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Next, we look at the clogging of the pen nib. Unlike pigments, dyes are soluble in the liquid and thus do not clog up the fountain pen nib. Depending on how fine your filtering process is, you might still have some particles left over in the natural ink, even after filtering that's invisible to the naked eye. Unfortunately, these could clog up your fountain pen. One last factor is the long-term effect of the natural inks on the nib. There could be pre-existing or added acids in the natural material itself that might degrade your nib. For example, to extract the purple from the eggplant, citric acid was added to water. Even iron gall ink, one of the oldest natural ink recipes, is known to be corrosive to metal nibs. So, while we can surmise that homemade natural inks are not the best for fountain pens, they are fantastic with the right writing instruments. They make wonderful inks for doing brush calligraphy. Beautiful, lush colors, adaptable for creating multi-toned ombre calligraphy. You can also use a dip pen or a pointed pen, like how I'm using the avocado peel ink here. Before we know if a particular ink is going to be suitable for any given writing implement, you do need to know what goes into the ink. The dye is just one component of it. That's the coloring agent. There are other aspects to look into as well. You got to think of, are there other additives? What kind of binders are used? What is the carrier liquid? It is important to know because you need to know, for example, that if an ink carries a binder like gum arabic, would that clog up my fountain pen nib? But that's absolutely fine for a pointed pen. Now go into what makes up the components of ink in this Natural Inks for Calligraphy playbook that you can download here for free. Let me know if you have other questions about natural inks. If you learned something new from this video, do like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I know what resonates with you. See you in the next video.